Loran Perea. I'm with Ivy Exec. I just want to very quickly thank everyone for attending our webinar, Authentic Personal Branding, presented by Amy Kopelan, who is the CEO and co-founder of the Guru Nation. Before I introduce Amy, I wanted to very quickly just go over a few logistical items to make sure that our webinar this evening runs as smooth as possible. I do ask that as part of the webinar, you do keep handy a notepad and a pencil or a pen, as Amy will be going through a bit of a brainstorming session with you. We will also be unmuting the mics starting just in a minute or so. And so you will have an opportunity to have a little bit more of an interactive webinar experience. And so do be prepared for that. If you do, however, wish to mute your mic, you can at any point during the webinar. You will see a green mic somewhere in your control panel. And if you do wish to mute yourself, feel free to press that green mic, and that will mute your particular audio dialing. So be aware of that. We do ask that because we are unmuting the attendees of the webinar, we are close to, we are anticipating about 75 attendees, which is wonderful. We do ask that you situate yourself into a quiet location so as to minimize any background noise that may occur. And certainly, if you do experience any technical issues during the webinar itself, feel free to send us a question through the Questions tab. That is also located on your control panel. And one thing to keep in mind also is that as a follow-up to the webinar itself, we will also be sending follow-up material, but also sending you a link to the recorded webinar itself. So you will have access to the entire webinar as part of the follow-up information that we send you for attending this webinar. And so with that, I'm just going to very quickly introduce Amy Kopelan. Amy, who we're certainly very excited to have join Ivy Exec for this webinar. We've developed a very strong partnership with the Guru Nation, and to have Amy come to us with her experience and her wealth of knowledge is something that we greatly appreciate, and certainly we are very, very excited to have this webinar as part of our 2010 Ivy Exec webinar series. Just a little bit of more information about Amy. Amy Kopelan actually has over 20 years of experience as an ABC television executive and independent conference producer. She has also co-authored some books. One particular is I Didn't See It Coming, the book that teaches business professionals how to avoid being blindsided in the world of business. She's also been featured on a number of different media channels, including Fox, Business Week, On the Money, CEO Magazine, Chief Learning Officer Magazine, as well as CNN.com, just to name a few. And as an author and industry expert, Ms. Kopelan has interviewed leading business innovators. She has moderated discussions at industry conferences. She has also spoken at a number of national business symposiums and served as a consultant to various institutions. And so certainly Amy comes with us with a tremendous wealth of experience in this space and tremendous insight that we're very, very fortunate to have her share with us this evening. So with that, Amy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Happy to welcome you all to the homepage of something called the Guru Nation. It is our marketing specialists, branding specialists, career coaches, executive search consultants, industry icons, if you will, business leaders, and it was our goal to put together this network where we would bring together unprecedented access to people that you really need to talk to and learn from and really be in contact with when you need it in order to move your career forward. And the reason we chose to do authentic personal branding in this particular webinar is that it is a request that comes all the time where people say, really, I don't understand the best way to brand myself and market myself. But more specifically, we have so many gurus inside of the Guru Nation who actually teach and talk about and instruct through all of their recorded sessions and live interviews how to, in fact, become an authentic personal brand. So I wanted you to all see what our homepage looks like. We have a wonderful alliance with Ivy Exec and are really, really thrilled to be doing this with them. And what's a little different tonight is that Alex is going to be my co-producer and my technician. And as opposed to my running my slides, I'm going to ask you all to participate and be part of our conversation, and Alex to move my slides along so that you all can follow what the conversation is about. But for those of you who, after this, want to hear this all again, obviously IB Exec will post it, Guru Nation will post it, so you'll have the opportunity to go back and listen again and again. So Alex, if we can go to the first slide and leave the Guru Nation homepage, I think we're ready to move on. All right, so what we're looking at is the topic of personal branding. And I think what you all certainly want to think about and what our gurus talk about is what is your brand? I think a lot of people toss that word around lightly and don't stop to really go through what we consider to be almost a 10-point analysis of really what is your brand. And Rosemary Davies-Janes, who happens to be one of our gurus in Canada, actually does a session for us inside of the Guru Nation, so I encourage you all to go listen because she'll do this certainly in more depth than I will, because what I want to do tonight is cover sort of 4 areas of you as a brand. One will be what is your brand. The next area will be how do you actually steward your brand. How do you network to get your brand out there? How do you, in fact, create some kind of an effective strategy for yourself in case you need to move your brand? And then what are all the action steps you need to get your product, your business, your consulting, or just you out into the market? So let's I guess, start. I assume you're all unmiked, and so I'm going to ask you at different times to sort of chime in and talk with me because I think it'll help if we can get some examples as we move forward. To really determine what your brand is a whole lot deeper than just, hey, I'm a consultant, or hey, I'm a marketer, or guess what, I'm a producer. Because there's no definition then around what that brand really is. In order to determine what your brand really is, you should be going through a process and assume you have a really blank canvas. And I'd like to walk through with you basically the steps or the 6 questions that you want to ask yourself. The first thing in determining your really authentic brand is what do you like and what do you not like? Now, it may seem like you don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but I'm going to suggest yes, you do, because we have met along the way so many people that are out there touting their brand, and it ends up that they're touting a brand around something that's not to the core what they really like. And worse, sometimes they're touting a brand that's around something they don't like at all. The second thing that you're really, really going to want to think about in order to be authentic, to be believed, to get out there in a way that people want to do business with you is what do you believe in? You know, it's really easy, and I say this very cavalierly, it's easy to promote something, talk about something, and engage in something that you believe in. But conversely, if your brand is not tied to your values and you're really promoting a brand that you don't believe in, the lack of authenticity is basically going to chop you off at the knees. Not only does it become hard if you get up every day, go to work, or make those phone calls, or talk to people, but you're trying to sound authentic about something that at the core you don't believe in. And I can't stress enough how many times we see that. And all of a sudden, you just stop and get up one morning and say, I think I'm this brand and I'm trying to promote this brand, but hey, I don't really necessarily believe in this. So it's a very conscious and internal sort of question that people have to come to grips with. The third thing in determining what your brand is for you to really start to consciously be aware of what do you really, really object to. And that seems in a way like a weird question because there are a lot of things we all object to. But somehow, finding these things out in advance really, really allows you to start to figure out how will I be authentic? How will people see me as authentic? And then when you get beyond that, how am I going to stay with the stewardship of my brand and never go off-brand because I really do believe in what I'm doing and I don't object to what my brand is all about. So we stop and say, okay, so let's look at that. What do I like? What do I not like? What do I believe in? What do I object to? How do you actually find that out? Well, I'm looking at number 4 on my list, and that is to survey others. Now, I'm not talking about a shortcut like I ask Alex and Alex asks 2 other people and we're done. If you were to look at people you know in all different walks of your life, you could actually create a survey, and you will be fascinated by the difference of opinion, the different answers, and I'm going to argue the very unexpected answers that you get from people. Now, some people that already know this and they've gone through and identified their brand, this will maybe be less revealing. Important, but maybe less revealing. For those trying to really figure out what is their core brand and how they're going to market it and present it and stand out in the marketplace, this survey of other people is amazingly eye-opening. I'm going to use me as an example because I think sometimes that personal example is the best way to go about this. I knew when I was at ABC Television that I was a producer, and yet I never stopped to actually think about that as my brand. I would talk about the fact that I could produce. I could talk about the fact that I knew how to book an event. I would talk about the fact that I could put a conference on. I would talk about the fact that I could write a book. I would even be able to say to people, I know how to get you to be a brilliant presenter. I know how to get somebody to be clear and have clarity. But then I had to stop and say, these are all different parts of me. But if I were to go and survey people, where is the consistent thread that's going to help me at some point say, ha-ha, here's my aha moment. I'm actually aware of what I am as a brand. And obviously, no surprise, after a while, I was in fact seeing very, very consistent messages. And here's what happened. I would talk to some people and they'd say, well, Amy, no matter what, you get people to absolutely understand how they're going to deliver a message and get rid of all of the unimportant information. And other people would say to me, well, you really know how to take an idea and make it happen in front of the room. And other people said to me, you know, I sometimes think of you as an agent. You really know how to promote on behalf of somebody else. And through this process, and I kid you not, 50 people, I put 50 people on my list, what started to emerge as the Amy Kopelan brand was that my brand was as a producer. And it meant I could produce people, I could produce ideas, I could produce events, I could produce concepts, I could produce marketing material, I could produce new ideas, and I could produce groups of people. But no matter what, it meant that I had identified the fact that as a brand, I was a producer. And the clarity that comes from something like that is really quite spectacular, because then no matter what I say about myself, and no matter how I market myself, and no matter who I go to talk to, I am amazingly clear about what my brand is, how I differ from somebody else. And then let's jump to number 5 and number 6. Alex, if you can point the way for me. I can, without question, tell you what I'm passionate about. And it comes across, no matter who it is, with amazing authenticity. And I can, without question, tell you what I'm talented at. And it's really easier to market yourself and sell yourself and be convincing and have anyone follow you up that hill when you talk about you and your brand, you can be passionate about it and you can be talented at it. So those are the key things when we start out looking at authentic branding, for us to say, what is personal branding about, and why should we not toss it aside so quickly when it comes to looking at ourselves? Let's jump to my next slide. The next slide is really about your value proposition when you're a brand. Before I do this, Alex, I assume the mics are open. Is there anybody that wants to throw a question up that really has to do with the 6 points about what is your brand? All right, then I'm going to assume you're all just scribbling away. Alex, anybody that's sending in a question by internet?
No, not at this time.
All right, so let's keep going. So then the next question in terms of your brand is really, what's the value proposition? Why should I, as a consumer, want your brand? Why do I care about you? What do you bring to me that is going to make me want to work with you, deal with you, buy you, associate with you, be happy to be around you more than somebody else? And it really boils down to two very distinct things. What is your unique positioning in the marketplace? And the second piece is, how are you, in a very constructive and helpful way, outshining your competition so that your brand is more desired, and your brand is more helpful, and your brand is more top shelf than other brands that are out there? I mean, you know, if you walk into a big drugstore or convenience store, there are so many brands on the shelf, but you are drawn to certain ones, and you're drawn to them basically because of their value proposition. You're drawn to them because you've either read about them, or you've watched an ad, or they have a label that you really trust, that somehow someone else has used them and talked about them. And you as a person, it's really no different. So let's say you're a marketing consultant or you're a public relations person. You really want to be sure that the brand you are putting out there has consistent delivery, never disappoints, and really can outshine so that you have a unique position and people say, oh, yes, I want to use the so-and-so public relations company because their brand is so trusted, so real, and so authentic. So my next slide, Alex, if you don't mind. What does it really mean then to be an authentic brand? It's another thing that people toss around really easily. Oh, it's so authentic, you know. Campbell's Soup, that's an authentic brand. The Ginzu knives in an infomercial is probably not an authentic brand. And yet, we know the names. So let's think about or talk about really what makes a brand, and I'm talking about you, authentic. And again, I'm going to remind you that there are many longer lists, but I've condensed this for us so that we can go through what I think are the most cogent and salient points when we think about what's an authentic brand. The first is proof. What can you do that actually delivers proof that you're going to be and do what you say? I cannot begin to tell you how many people say, well, yeah, I'll call you back by the end of the week. And I'm guessing if you all look around, you know how many people don't. Now, it doesn't mean they're malicious people and something came up, something got in the way, somebody forgot, somebody got snowed in, someone didn't have a cell phone that was charged. It doesn't matter because things happen. But in order for you to be seen as an authentic brand, you have to concentrate on the fact that you need to offer proof that you, in fact, are authentic. You're the real deal, and you can deliver. And so whatever it is, it's always so easy to say, well, you know, I'll get to it next time. The truth is, it's hard work to be an authentic brand, but boy, the difference on the other end is huge. So let's go to number two. Number two is, how consistent are you? You know, if you do a great job as a brand on the first assignment or the first conversation or the first meeting, it isn't a, phew, got it, nailed it, done. In order to really, really be an authentic brand, you have to be delivering consistently. And it's probably, if you think about brands that you know, the brands that you want to buy and the brands that you want to use are the ones that are amazingly consistent and don't disappoint you. It's probably one of the greatest challenges on this list because it's really easy to fall off once you're moving along. I mean, let's think of Johnson & Johnson at one point, you know, aspirin. I mean, everyone just assumed this is the most consistent brand ever, and they did have a problem along the way at one point, and they had to go through hoops and you know what in terms of marketing dollars to get back to the place where they could be a consistent brand. Coca-Cola, you know, when they tried to launch New Coke, whoa, big problem. All of a sudden, the brand was not consistent. So everything we do as an authentic personal brand is to think about how consistent are we, and are we in fact taking every step along the way that confirms that consistency so that we really don't disappoint the end user. Number 3 on my list is, what's that special sauce? What is the thing about you that in fact makes you so authentic and so special? And again, I challenge you to think of any brand that you just love to go by or that you constantly will use. Why? You know, what's the special sauce? And whatever you identify in that brand that you love, you should turn around and think about, how am I going to find my special sauce and make sure that no matter how I talk about myself, no matter who I hang out with, no matter what I look like and do and say, I am always, always focusing on how that's going to enhance the special sauce that I bring to the market. Are you memorable? Number 4 on my list. Are you memorable? You don't want to be memorable because you did something crazy. You don't want to be memorable because you did something offensive. You want to be memorable because something you did is so consistent. And there are, in fact, worksheets inside the Guru Nation that allows you to go through this whole process and really feel out and test. And again, Rosemary's the one that runs you through that, whether you, in fact, have hit this list. Number 5 is, who's my target market? I mean, you may decide that you're a brand and you're authentic and you've been chugging along here and doing the things that I've asked you to do, but the next big challenge is, who are you marketing to? You know, you may have decided you're an authentic brand and you're out there in the market, and that market doesn't want you. Now, it doesn't mean you're a bad brand, and it doesn't mean they're the wrong market. It just means that the fit wasn't predetermined the way it needed to be. So in order to be an authentic brand, you have to be sure that you are, in fact, marketing to the right people. You know, I'll circle back to Campbell's Soup for a moment. They really know who their target market is. And it's certainly something that they look at when they decide to bring that brand out and try to make it memorable, but only to a certain target market. Number 6 is, are you irresistible? I mean, what about you, when you think about, you know, who you are, what makes you irresistible? For every one of us, it's going to be something really, really different, but that is part of being authentic. And when I walk into certain stores, I don't even look at other brands. There are times that the brand I want is so irresistible, be it what it looks like, its pricing, its message, it's how it functions for me. It doesn't matter, but it has become irresistible, and that's your challenge. You want to become irresistible. The last one on my list is dependable. Are you, in fact, a dependable brand? That means as a person. It means in your delivery. It means in what you represent. You know, if you are touting something as a brand, and then, whoops, somebody sees you, you know, marching in a very revealing bikini on some beach somewhere, and that wasn't what your brand was about because you were touting baby clothes, you know, maybe you are not dependable anymore. And so as much as we'd like to say, well, our brand is only about what we do when we're at work, the truth is our brand goes with us wherever we go. Let's jump to another slide, Alex, because I think it is probably, you know, how we have to finish up the conversation on branding in this part of what we're doing, and that is the brand stewardship that you bring to you and to your brand. It doesn't happen by accident, which means that you really have to be the steward of you, and you have to decide. It is a consistent challenge, but boy, is it rewarding, because the more you steward your brand and make sure that you never go off brand, the more people are going to really follow and buy who you are. So before I jump to what I consider to be the next whole phase of this, which is networking, I'm going to stop again and just offer to take any questions that anybody might have. And I do appreciate you may not want to ask them live, but I'm here to answer them in case you do. And anybody could throw any question in terms of their own particular brand or challenge that they want to toss up.
Amy, this is Alex. So we have a couple questions that came in through the questions box that I wanted to throw out at you.
Sure.
One is from an individual that was looking to see if maybe you could give us an example of an individual brand as opposed to a company brand, and walk us through perhaps your point on the previous slide of authentic personal brands. The one that she threw out was the Obama brand. How would you kind of evaluate that brand when it comes to an individual?
How would I evaluate the Obama brand as an individual? Somebody asked me the other day how I would critique his delivery, so this is really sort of in that same phase. He has decided, as far as I see it, to in fact be the Obama brand, and he has set certain criteria around it. And I think sometimes and this is again from my personal perspective, I think sometimes all of his advisors are not necessarily as aware of what the brand is trying to deliver. And I think we saw recently where he started out with a very specific brand coming into office, and I think too many of his brand stewards let him move off brand. He came in saying change. He came in saying there were certain agendas. He came in saying there were certain deliverables. And lo and behold, I think there might have been a little bit of contamination in the system. And so that's where we go back to brand stewardship. I mean, there was somebody perhaps taking their eye off the ball and not watching that the brand, in fact, was delivering on a consistent, irresistible basis everything that the brand claimed to be. And I'm going to argue that if you think about branding and a personal brand, it almost really doesn't matter that much whether it's a personal you brand or a cosmetic on a shelf, because really you're the CEO of you. And if you think of you and what you need to do in your life and in your business, you are your own brand steward, and all the decisions you're going to make about staying on brand are really no different than if you were assigned as a brand manager to a product.
Great, thank you. And then we have another question that's going to kind of the first point that you brought up, what is your brand? Specifically point number 4, a question was raised, how do I best go about surveying others to assess my own brand? Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I do, I want to remind you that we have that very, very specific workshop in the Guru Nation, and I think Rosemary is brilliant at teaching it, but let me see if I can summarize it. I went to, seriously, 50 different people. I went and mixed them up between men and women, younger people, older people, customers, friends, clients, people who were in academia that I knew, people who were former clients, and basically said, when you think about me, what are the first 3 words that come to mind? And that's a fairly potent question, and it's interesting how you will start to see certain words repeat, and then every so often some really out there missile that comes flying in that perhaps is not what you expected. And sometimes it's the most revealing. Sometimes people are going to tell you what they think you want to hear, but you have to be very firm to say, look, I have no preconceived notions. I really would like some help in this process because I think I have a huge opportunity to identify what my special sauce is. But I don't want to look in the mirror and identify my own special sauce. I'd like you to tell me, when you think of me, what are the first 3 words that come to mind? So I think that's the first part of the process, and I think it goes on from there. You can certainly say, and think of the natural extension of that. When you think of me, what one particular idea would never, ever cross your mind as it relates to me? And what's interesting, someone we know, Alex, who did this, and she had really, really decided who and what she was. And interestingly, when she asked the question and said, what concept would never come to mind when you think of me, because she thought she already knew, she was getting feedback that absolutely blew her away, because what she was hearing is that the thing that would never come to mind about her was the thing she thought she was. And so sometimes this is a very eye-opening process.
Interesting.
If you keep a very good list, and if you notebook this, you start to get a very, very in-depth and I think very candid look at who and what you are. And, it helps you identify where you're authentic. I mean, if you just think you are an amazing presenter or you're an amazing marketer, and you start hearing from 50 people that the last thing they would think about you is about marketing, there's an aha moment. I assume that answers the question for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think tremendous insight there. I think right now we have a few additional questions, but I think perhaps we will probably hold off on that so that we can continue with the presentation.
No, I don't. The truth is I don't mind if they're on branding because we're going to soon move to networking. I'd rather handle the branding questions, even if, because this is really so core to, I think, what people need to do to go forward, even if we skip some things toward the end, I think it's important to really get to the heart of this so that we can help as many people as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another question that was brought up was, does one's value proposition change over time? What are your thoughts on that, Amy?
Oh, I think someone's value proposition will definitely change because if they've identified who and what they are as a brand, what they bring to the market and what they bring to other people gets more rich, more developed, more special, and they, I think, I don't want to say don't have to work as hard, but what happens is it comes with more ease. So for instance, and I'll use me in this particular case, I have been producing now as long as I have that I can hear the kernel of an idea and know exactly how to help somebody produce whatever idea they have. I can ask fewer questions, I get it faster, and I'm able to guide someone and move somebody forward in a faster, more concise way, which ultimately means that my value proposition to them and even for myself has become deeper and richer. The flip side of that is that the value proposition can change if you decide that you are just not passionate about what you're doing anymore. And then at that point, the value proposition has gone the other direction. You are struggling and working harder to deliver something, and it's really not very authentic. And that's another aha moment where you have to perhaps reevaluate who and what your brand is.
Great. And then one additional question that I think is quite relevant to what's been going on in the news recently is with Toyota. Given the recent events with Toyota, what do you think has been the impact on its brand? And as a kind of a second follow-up question to that, can Toyota recover, and how would you recommend that they go about doing it?
Well, you always want to get out in front of bad news, whether it's your own personal brand or a company. I mean, I'll go back and use the Johnson & Johnson example when there was contamination in the aspirin bottles. I mean, everybody thought that's it. You know, Johnson & Johnson is sort of sunk here, and they'll never be able to sell aspirin again. What they did was jump out way in front of it. And I think Toyota, unfortunately, and this is, again, just one woman's perspective, but I think fairly valid here to say, I don't think they've jumped out in front of it enough. And I think that instead of trying to pretend that something is okay, you want to beat bad news to the door. You want to overkill. You want to go out of your way to so redefine the quality of your brand, the reliability of your brand, the irresistibility of your brand. I think at that point you have to say that the money is secondary, that your customer is first, that there is no smoke and mirrors campaign. I would have expected and appreciated somebody coming to the microphone, holding a press conference, and doing the greatest mea culpa we ever heard, ever, ever, ever. And it didn't happen, I don't think, to really speak to the authenticity. And I think people feel it. They feel it and they know it. So can they recover? I think we have to wait and see. It's really going to be a question of how they serve their customer and how they decide to make this an irresistible brand and to go back to the place where people can depend on the brand.
Great. Wonderful. Wonderful. Are there any additional questions from the attendees before we move on to the networking component? Looks like we might be ready for the networking plans, Amy.
Okay. Well, I'm trusting that there are some fast scribbling here and note-taking. So I'm going to move on to the whole premise of networking the brand. And this is something that I, of course, feel very passionate about and want to start by just telling a story. I went to talk about this at a large accounting firm in California, and we met with 25 people who were relatively new to the company, but they were on what we'll call the high potential management team. And it was a room full of women leaders inside this accounting firm. And we were talking about the need, when you think of yourself as a brand, to also have a personal board of directors. And everyone in the room looked and said, oh, well, I sort of have a board of directors. And I said, well, really, then let's get into the meat of what it is. And Alex, that's the slide, obviously, that I want everyone to be looking at, and is really what is a personal board of directors, and why should you have one? What's really the purpose? How do you construct a board of directors? How do you send out an invitation to people and say, I'd like you to serve on my board of directors? And then what's the timetable you offer up? In other words, how long should anybody serve on your board of directors? So the reason the story in the accounting firm is so interesting is that while we were having this conversation with the women around the conference table, the partner, the managing partner of the office walked in, and it happened to be a male. And I was in the midst of discussing with the room that a board of directors really needed to be a very healthy mix of men and women, because you got different perspectives, different guidance, different ideas, and different ways of people jumping in to help you decide what you needed to do with your brand and your career. And he said, oh, what are we discussing here in the room? And I said, well, we're really talking about a board of directors and the important part of having it be a very healthy mix of people. And he said, oh, I have a board of directors, and let me take over the conversation here. And he said, ladies, I have a board of directors, and it's a very strong and robust board, and I couldn't agree more. And so I said, well, then how did you go about putting it together, and what was the mix of people? And he said, well, there's no mix. It's all men. And I said, well, I'm then proud of you for having one, clearly, but I'm not quite sure I understand how you get the broadest range of support and ideas and information when you've really loaded your personal board of directors with people who are all men and who all think the way you think. And he said, well, that's what it should be about. So I want to stop there to say, no, that's really not what it should be about. A personal board of directors is not necessarily so everyone agrees with you and thinks the way you think. And so what I'd like to do is spend a couple of minutes looking at how somebody really would put together a personal board of directors. I have one. I find it invaluable, but they are clearly, and here's the most important thing, they are people who are not personally invested in me. Now, I say that again because it's a really important piece. To have a personal board of directors, they can't be emotionally or personally invested in me. They have to care about my career. They have to have faith that I am a good brand and a good product, but they can't be personally invested. And here's a perfect example why. Let's say you have a team of people that are supporting you, and one happens to be a mate, or one happens to be somebody who's a relative. And one of the decisions you have to make as a brand and as your career comes up with questions is, should you move somewhere else? Is an opportunity in another country important for you? And let's say you turn around and ask your board, and somebody is related to you, I'm going to argue that it's hard to get a completely unbiased response to, should I move to Japan to take that job? And so that's an example why, when you put together a personal board of directors, the purpose, we're back to number one on my list, Alex, the purpose is to have a board that represents an unbiased perspective. And so construction, how would I love you to construct your personal board? The best way to construct a board is a mix of men and women, a mix of older and younger, a mix of people who represent legal and accounting, strategic thinking, marketing. It's really up to you, but the construction needs to not be arbitrary. And you need to construct it with people who really represent a wide range of thinking so that they can guide you accordingly. Let's look at number three, and I'm aware of the time, so I want to be sure that we cover this because this is important. The invitation. most people say, well, geez, I can't put a board together because I'm really not quite sure what to ask, and I don't want someone to say, oh, my God, that's too much of a time commitment. So the invitation is really this. I'm looking to grow my career, and I'm looking to have support as I move me and my brand forward. And I would love you to serve on my personal board of advisors because I respect your thinking, your wisdom, and your point of view. And may I call you 3 times a year to check in, to tell you what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, what is happening, and to get your perspective when I need some guidance in your arena. And really, Alex, and I think you've probably seen this, so many people are flattered to be asked, but also people are very, very anxious to help if their time commitment is really not much more than that 3 or 4 time a year phone call with you. I think what you need to do as a brand is to make sure that your board is kept up to snuff about what you're doing and who you are and what you might need. But the invitation becomes a lot easier because you're basically flattering somebody and asking them to spend a little bit of time with you. It takes me to number 4, again, which is the timetable. And that is, you don't ever really want to ask someone to serve more than a year. Your needs will change, the guidance you need will change, the advice you need may change, and you may find that you need more of one kind of expertise. And you should have the freedom, because it's you and the brand, it's your brand, to figure out the mix that you need. And in tying number 3 to number 4, the invitation is a whole lot easier when you say to somebody, this is really only for the first year or the second year, however you want to define it. Here's the support from you that I would like. And people will be really candid. If they can't do it, they're going to say, I'm really flattered, but this is a really bad time for me. I'm going to be on the road, and it's really, I'm not going to help you the best right now. And I suggest that you can then say thank you, and thank you for being candid, and is there anyone else that you might recommend in your arena who would be anxious to serve? And so that's really an important piece to think about as it goes to putting a board together. Just like I talked about Rosemary, I do a lot of work on personal board of directors, and inside the Guru Nation have a lot of sessions where we really go through some very, very line by line, if you will, ways of evaluating each person on the board and what they bring to the party. And I'm certainly anxious and willing to help anybody who wants to do that in a more detailed way. So let me stop on this point because there are other things I'd love to cover in the time we have left, but open it up to see if there are specific questions about assembling a personal board of directors.
Amy, we do have a couple that have been sent through the question box.
Okay,
one is, why would anyone not personally invested in this particular person and care to invest in her career through the board?
Ask that again.
I'm going to try to articulate a little bit more once I read it. Let's see.
I mean, why'd I make the distinction about somebody not personally invested in you?
Exactly.
Well, I think you have to listen to the words really carefully. If it's somebody who is emotionally and personally invested in you, they can't make an unbiased judgment. So I'm not going to be able to say to my husband, should I go to France and take that job? He may really think that maybe I should, but that means I may not see him. And so it's not fair to put that kind of pressure. The flip side is you want people on the board who believe in you, who think you have a lot to offer, who appreciate what you bring to the market, but don't have a personal investment in you. And that allows them to be objective. It doesn't mean they don't believe in you or care about you or think that you're a smart person, but you have to remove the emotional and personal connection so that you can get really unfiltered opinion. Does that help?
Very good, very good. Another question about a personal board of directors. One of the attendees brought up the comparison that a one-year term for a personal board seems to be a lot shorter than what a normal term for a business board of directors would be. So why the difference in this case?
Because you, I think, are asking a favor of somebody. And you can decide at the end of the 1 year that that relationship has been so wonderful and you re-up. But I think initially, since so many people are running their own businesses, that the 1 year term doesn't make anybody feel too committed to something. It's like a mentoring relationship, or you go to a gym and you want to coach. There are natural time frames where you may need to move on, and so too the board member or the coach. And so nobody wants to feel too encumbered, and it's much easier for someone to say yes when they know that you're only asking for 1 year.
Understandable. And then what do you think about the option, one of the attendees brings this up, do you believe it is appropriate to perhaps compensate your personal board of directors in some sort of monetary way, or would that perhaps get in the way of what the goal of the personal board of directors is?
Well, it's a great question, and the truth is it's very, very personal, and it is arbitrary, and I have never compensated anybody. I've had probably, my goodness, at least 20 people rotate in and off and around my boards. And I don't compensate them because I feel that we don't meet enough, that it is more opinion-based than time-based. I feel in my stage of life, I'm giving back to them in a particular way, so it almost creates a barter arrangement. And I think there's a formality when there's money on the table that perhaps is not there when there isn't. But again, it's a really optional situation. I have been in a place where I've served on a personal board, and somebody decided that they were going to offer a small fee to everybody, but they then asked everyone to show up somewhere to participate. So I'm suggesting that this is virtual, but if somebody really wants to go beyond that and formalize the relationship, there's absolutely no negative to deciding that there should be a fee attached to this.
Good point, very good point. And then in terms of kind of the profile of the board of directors, should your board of directors perhaps consist of individuals who are well connected or who have achieved significant success in their own careers?
I think the more professionally versed and the more diverse, the better for you. Now, that said, it also depends on what is the business or brand that you're going about pursuing. I've never had anybody in nursing sit on my board. It's too far removed. I look for people who are very, very connected in the world of marketing and public relations and who have legal expertise or accounting expertise. But certainly, since it's about networking, the more versed and connected people can be on your board in fields that relate to your business, then absolutely the stronger that board will be, and it will serve you better.
That makes very much makes sense. What do you think in terms of how the board of directors meets with the actual professionals? Do you recommend that they meet in person, or is it appropriate to perhaps have this sort of relationship through phone calls, etc.?
I have never, this is going to sound funny, never really been successful enough to get all my board members in one room together. They are doing such amazing things and traveling so much. What we tend to do is group conference calls, and they've come to enjoy each other. But I do that as a launch, and then I reach out to each of them when I need their particular skill and expertise. So in my particular case, it's a once-a-year group conference call. I have seen it work in many, many different directions and places, but I will argue that it's very, very difficult to get everyone all together. Some people I know Skype, and they have their boards Skype once a year or twice a year. Other people I know have a very small board. They make it 3 people, and then they decide that those 3 people can get together. But again, this is a very individual piece, and there's no right or wrong attached to it.
Very good, very good. And then kind of continuing, kind of sharing your insight from your own experiences with your board of directors, could you perhaps, an attendee requested this, would you be able to perhaps give us an example of a type of conversation that you've had with your personal board members during the course of the year so far?
Absolutely, and these kinds of things are a lot of fun for me. One of the conversations that we recently had is directly connected to the Guru Nation. And one of the things that we've had to decide is, and again, I'm opening this up for huge vulnerability here, but I'm in a way excited to do it. We needed to all talk about how we were going to create in a very easy, navigable way the opportunity for people to buy time with our coaches on the Guru Nation. And we've decided to call it Shop the Guru Nation. And one of the big stumbling blocks was, what did everybody feel was fair pricing? And what kind of pricing structure would the gurus be comfortable with? And given our business model, how much should we be sharing with our gurus? And then how did we make this really easy for the members of the Guru Nation to find and to understand what the guru had to offer, and to, in essence, dip their credit card? And we are all still in the process of figuring that out. It's sort of the excitement of being at this stage in our business. So we did a group conference call last week. It's a very current example. And everybody's assignment was to say, go back, go to the site, work through the site, and as a board member, come back and give me the top 3 things you would do differently on our site if you wanted to get us to this next plateau in the terms of our business and growing what the business could do. So it's been a very exciting and robust opportunity for everyone on the board from their different perspective to chime in. The one that happened a year ago, which is in a way totally different, Alex, but tons of fun, is that we said to everybody, we'd like to know what you all think the difference is between a mission statement and a tagline. And we asked everyone on the board to take those 2 concepts and come back to us and say, what would you say the difference is between the 2? And if you had to create a mission statement for us versus a tagline, what would that be? And you know, people on my board are from all different phases of marketing and advertising and news and television and radio and publishing, and the array of answers that came back, it was beyond exciting. And we had just a ton of wonderful stuff to look at and talk about.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that insight. We have another question that kind of, I think, will help us move in terms of closing out the webinar. This individual is very interested in learning more about who can help him with his own survey of others. Perhaps you can share a little bit more information about Amy at this point and tell us what we could do to really learn a little bit more about that process.
Again, just so I'm clear, the question is more about how to go about the survey process?
Exactly, exactly.
I'm not sure how to circle back to this particular person, but I'd like to know, beyond what we talked about, what other particular pieces of the survey he's interested in. Obviously, one of the things I could suggest was the session inside of the Guru Nation, and it's called Who Knows What You've Got. And you can go listen. It's a half hour, and it will really tell you, breaking down piece by piece by piece, the kinds of questions that you can ask. And it's all around the who recognizes what you've got. But if I could take what I explained and sort of build that out, I'll give you a couple more. We talked about, what are the 3 key things or key words that come to mind when you think about me. The second thing we reviewed was, what's the one idea about me that would never come to mind? And the third thing possibly to put on that list, which I've seen work really, really beautifully, is, if I were to start a business, what do you think I would be most talented at doing? And I think that people who are asked to be candid really get excited about the opportunity to say, Alex, I've always thought you would be a great this. And here's an example where this played out. There's a fellow that I know who's in the clothing business in California, and he's supposed to be the marketing director in this particular clothing company. And he was talking to me about the fact that he really, really struggles to go to work every day. And when no one's looking, as opposed to sitting there and marketing this clothing line, he plays games on his internet video screen and just hopes that nobody sees. And he was just talking on and on with me about so many things that he likes and enjoys and the kinds of people he wants to spend time with and all the things that he would rather do. And what emerged for me, as clear as could be, is that this fellow really didn't belong in the clothing business. I mean, heaven knows how he got stuck there. He really needed to be a maitre d' in a restaurant or go to an island somewhere and be running like the beach bar. And so towards the end of this conversation, I said to him, had you ever thought about really what impresses other people about you? And he said, no, but I wouldn't trust anyone to know. I said, well, you need to trust people to know. I said, because there's something about you that is so delicious when you're engaging other people. So maybe you're in the wrong business. And we started to talk about it, and then he went and asked 10 other people. And sure enough, Alex, every single person came back and said, wow, if I could just script this for you, I would probably have you open a restaurant. And someone else said, oh, God, I don't know, I would have you open a hotel on an island. And what he started to see over and over again was that people really did see him in a very different role, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Good to ask questions from what it sounds like. Great. Is there any, I think maybe what we could do is, since we are running a little bit over, Amy, could we maybe run through very quickly some of the other information that we have to present as quickly as we possibly could?
We could, although I almost fear, Alex, that it would gyp a lot of people in terms of what else we have to talk about. And maybe, and again, this is just another point of view, maybe we do stop here and then look for another time to talk about skill banks and exit strategies and wish lists and make that another conversation that we have.
Absolutely, absolutely. Given that it is a little bit over what our time slot is, I think that sounds very reasonable. What we'll do on our end, Amy, is send all of the attendees our webinar and any follow-up information that we can in regards to what we presented here tonight. And then, as you mentioned, Amy, maybe we could also see if we might be able to find an opportunity to share the additional information that we did not have an opportunity to get to.
That would be great.
Great, great. Well, definitely on behalf of Ivy Exec, I really want to take the time to thank Amy for taking some time out of her schedule. She certainly is very busy with all of the initiatives that are going on with the Guru Nation, which are certainly plenty. And I do want to encourage everyone who perhaps may have not had an opportunity to visit the Guru Nation website to do so. There's certainly a wealth of information there that I believe in particular really would resonate with the members of the Ivy Exec Network. So certainly please do that. And as I mentioned, we will be sending follow-up information that, in addition to the recording of this webinar, any follow-up information we can to really serve as a supplement to what we were able to share here tonight. With that, Amy, is there anything else that we could perhaps add before we close out?
No, I obviously want to make my network available and me available. It's amy@thegurunation.com. And the website is thegurunation.com. And, I sit here thinking everyone has remarkable things to do, and there are no ends to the opportunities. And any way we can help anybody, we are happy to do that.
Great, great, wonderful. Certainly, as our follow-up email, we'll share with you all Amy's contact information, as well as information to assist you in getting the appropriate information on the Guru Nation website as well. So again, Amy, I really want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone for attending our webinar tonight. Certainly, it was of tremendous value, and as I expected, there was a tremendous wealth of information, very, very valuable to our network, and I do appreciate, Amy, you taking out the time. And for those who were able to attend, we want to thank you again on behalf of Ivy Exec for attending, for really making our webinar series a very successful one. We certainly will have another webinar coming up in the future, and we certainly hope to have everyone who was able to attend this webinar to be able to attend that one again in the future as well. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good night and a good afternoon.